My friends, there exists no prison as formidable as the one we build within our own minds. It has no iron bars, no watchful guards, no visible chains, yet it holds us fast. It is a prison of limiting beliefs, fashioned from the whispers of doubt and the echoes of past defeats. Who told you that you could not rise beyond your station? Who convinced you that the best of your life has already passed? These voices do not belong to truth. They are merely shadows cast by the fears of others, by failures misinterpreted, by lessons wrongly learned. And like shadows, they vanish when brought into the light. Consider this: the world has never been moved by those who resigned themselves to what was reasonable. It has been shaped by those who saw what was, yet believed in what could be. If a man believes he is shackled when the chains have long since fallen away, does it not follow that his captivity is a deception? The task before you is not to accept, but to inquire, not to conform, but to awaken. Every great mind, every soul that has reached beyond the common, has first questioned the beliefs that confined them. And this, too, is your calling. If you would soar, you must first recognize that you were never meant to crawl. If you would achieve, you must cast aside the borrowed fears of a world that prefers you small. There is no nobility in shrinking. There is no virtue in accepting false limitations. Your mind is the key, and the lock is but an illusion. Break free, think higher, live greater. Let no small thought govern your life. You were made for more. The mind is a garden, and every thought a seed. Left unattended, it grows wild with weeds, doubt, fear, hesitation. But if cultivated with care, it becomes a landscape of wisdom, courage, and boundless possibility. The power of thought is not a thing to be taken lightly, for it shapes the entire course of a person's life. It is not external circumstance, nor the fleeting whims of fortune, but the steady whisper of belief that determines the heights to which one may ascend. A person does not act apart from thought, they act because of it. Every great endeavor, every triumph of human will, began first as an idea. The architect sees the cathedral in his mind before the first stone is laid. The scholar envisions understanding before knowledge is acquired. The explorer believes in distant shores before his vessel departs. Thought precedes reality, and so the nature of our thoughts determines the world we build around us. If we think in fear, we create barriers. If we think in faith, we forge pathways. Many live as though they are bound by unseen chains, believing themselves incapable of great change. They mistake passing thoughts for truth, never pausing to examine where these beliefs originated. A child does not enter the world doubting his potential. Doubt is learned. He is told what he can and cannot do, what is realistic and what is beyond reach. These words, if left unchallenged, take root and become the quiet governors of his future. And yet, if a belief is merely inherited rather than proven, must it be accepted as fact? Consider the person who deems themselves incapable of leadership simply because they have never led before. They mistake inexperience for incapacity. But the truth is far different. Ability is forged in the fire of action, not granted beforehand. A person who has never run does not say they were not born to move, they simply have yet to take the first stride. The same is true for every skill, every pursuit, every endeavor worth achieving. The mind must first accept the possibility before the body can act upon it. There is a peculiar thing about human nature: we often see limits where none exist. A horse, if tied for too long, may remain standing in place even when the rope is removed. A bird raised in a cage may hesitate before spreading its wings, even when the door is open. And so it is with people. They live within invisible walls, restrained not by reality but by perception. If they believe they cannot rise beyond their station, they will not try. If they believe success is for others but not for them, they will not reach for it. The walls are not made of stone, yet they are obeyed as though they were. But there is a greater truth. A person may have been given falsehoods to believe, but they are not bound to them. Thoughts can be examined, challenged, and, if necessary, discarded. The mind is not a prison, but a workshop. It is a place where ideas are formed, shaped, and refined. If the thoughts one holds lead to fear, hesitation, and mediocrity, then they must be uprooted and replaced with those that lead to boldness, clarity, and resolve. The person who understands the power of thought does not surrender easily to despair. They do not accept limitation without question. They recognize that fear is often a whisper, not a law. They know that the mind, when properly directed, can elevate a person beyond what once seemed possible. It is not circumstance that makes a person, but the quality of their thinking. To think rightly is to live rightly. To believe in the possibility of growth is the first step toward transformation. The question is not whether the mind has power, it does. The question is whether that power will be left untended, or whether it will be cultivated with care. If thoughts are the architects of reality, then let them build something worthy. Let them shape a life not of doubt, but of strength. Let them be the force that turns impossibility into certainty. The most formidable chains are not those made of iron, nor those locked with keys. The strongest bonds are the unseen ones, beliefs that bind a person so completely that they no longer question their captivity. These chains do not rattle, nor do they weigh upon the shoulders like a physical burden, yet they govern thought, action, and destiny. A person who believes they are limited will live as though they are, no matter how free they truly are. The tragedy is not in the limitation itself, but in the fact that it was never real to begin with. Limiting beliefs are often inherited, passed from one generation to the next like heirlooms of caution. A parent, shaped by hardship, tells their child to be careful, to be realistic, to stay within the boundaries of what is safe. A teacher, believing in the importance of practicality, discourages dreams that seem too ambitious. A society, built upon the failures of those who tried and did not succeed, whispers that it is better not to try at all. And so, these words take root in the mind, forming barriers that are accepted as truth. The person does not see the wall being built, only that they now live within it. The difficulty with these chains is that they do not appear as chains at all. They disguise themselves as wisdom, as prudence, as the voice of reason. You must accept your place, they say. Do not aim too high, lest you fall. But what they do not say is that these warnings are not truth, but fear. They do not say that every person who has ever achieved anything of worth first had to step beyond such words. They do not tell of the countless individuals who have refused these invisible shackles and, in doing so, have discovered that there was never a true barrier at all. Consider the person who has failed once and, because of that failure, believes they are doomed to fail again. They are not bound by reality, for reality allows for growth, for learning, for second chances. They are bound instead by a belief that failure is a reflection of their nature rather than a single event. And so, they do not try again. Not because they cannot, but because they believe they cannot. The chain exists, not in the world around them, but in the confines of their own mind. Fear is a craftsman of these chains. It forges them from past experiences, from words spoken in moments of doubt, from the silent anxieties that creep into the mind when all is still. It tells a person that stepping forward is dangerous, that the unknown is filled with risk. And while it is true that uncertainty carries challenge, it is also true that every great thing ever achieved was once uncertain. The person who listens to fear more than possibility will find themselves unmoving, not because they lack the strength to move, but because they have convinced themselves that they should not. 2. Plays its part in this captivity. A person becomes accustomed to their surroundings, to their routines, to the limits they have accepted. They may not be happy, but they are familiar. And familiarity, even when it is unfulfilling, often feels safer than the unknown. The mind, preferring ease over challenge, persuades itself that remaining within these walls is preferable. It is not so bad here, it whispers. Why risk something worse? But it does not ask, what if there is something greater? It does not consider that the walls are made of nothing more than assumption. The greatest of human accomplishments were not made by those who obeyed these silent chains. They were made by those who saw them for what they were, illusions, barriers of thought rather than reality. A mind willing to question its limits is a mind capable of breaking them. A person who dares to ask, what if I can, has already begun the process of freedom. The moment one recognizes that they are bound only by belief, the chains lose their power. There is no lock upon these chains except the one placed by the mind itself. There is no key needed but the willingness to challenge what has long been accepted without question. The limits one lives by are often nothing more than inherited fears, outdated warnings, and assumptions mistaken for truth. To live beyond them is not reckless, it is necessary. To remain within them is not wisdom, it is surrender. And surrender was never meant to be the story of the human spirit. There is a quiet deception that governs the lives of many, one so subtle that it often goes unnoticed. It is the tendency to mistake assumption for truth, to accept without question that which has never been proven. A person believes they are incapable simply because they have never attempted. They assume a door is locked because they have never tried to open it. And so, they live within boundaries that were never set by reality, but by their own unquestioned beliefs. The human mind is quick to fill in the unknown with assumption. It prefers certainty, even if that certainty is flawed. If a person stumbles in a new pursuit, they may assume they are not meant for it. If they encounter resistance, they may believe it is a sign to turn back. If they have never seen something done, they may conclude that it cannot be done. And yet, throughout history, progress has always belonged to those who refuse to accept such assumptions as truth. The pioneers, the visionaries, the inventors, all of them saw beyond what was known and dared to question what others had accepted. Assumptions are often inherited, passed down from one person to another until they harden into unchallenged truths. A child may grow up hearing that success is reserved for a certain kind of person, that opportunity is limited, that certain dreams are impractical. They absorb these beliefs, not because they have found them to be true, but because they have never been encouraged to test them. And so, they enter the world already wearing chains that no one has placed upon them but themselves. The tragedy is not in the limitation itself, but in the fact that it was never real to begin with. The difference between truth and assumption lies in inquiry. Truth withstands questioning, assumption withers under scrutiny. A person who believes they are incapable must ask themselves, by what evidence is this belief sustained? Have they truly reached the limits of their ability, or have they simply stopped at the first sign of difficulty? Have they failed enough times to prove that success is impossible, or have they merely abandoned the path too soon? Truth requires examination, but assumption thrives in avoidance. Those who never question their limitations remain bound by them. It is a curious thing that people are more willing to accept limitation than possibility. When they hear that something cannot be done, they believe it without hesitation. But when they hear that something extraordinary is within their reach, they demand proof. It is as if the mind is wired to expect failure before it considers success. Yet, history is filled with those who overturned these expectations. The world was once convinced that man could not fly, that the depths of the ocean could not be explored, that voices could not be carried across great distances. These were not truths, they were assumptions. And those who dared to challenge them reshaped the course of human progress. To live by assumption is to build a house upon shifting sands. It is to allow untested beliefs to dictate the course of one's life. But truth, once discovered, is unshakable. A person who once believed they were weak but proves their strength through action will never again accept the falsehood of their own inadequacy. A person who once assumed they were incapable but achieves what they thought impossible will never again be deceived by doubt. Each step toward truth dismantles the foundations of assumption until nothing remains but clarity. The most dangerous assumptions are those that go unnoticed. They are the silent architects of limitation, shaping decisions before they are even made. They whisper that certain dreams are not for us, that success belongs to others, that we must remain where we are because change is uncertain. But if these beliefs are nothing more than inherited fears and misplaced caution, then they have no rightful authority over a person's destiny. They exist only so long as they are believed. And the moment they are questioned, they begin to lose their power. The path to transformation begins with a simple question: is this true? It is a question that unravels illusions, that separates what is real from what has merely been assumed. A person who lives by truth rather than assumption is not easily swayed by fear, nor are they quick to accept limitation. They test, they challenge, they pursue. And in doing so, they uncover a world far greater than the one they had once imagined. To learn is a noble pursuit, but to unlearn may be an even greater one. The mind is not merely a vessel to be filled with knowledge, it is also a space that must be cleared of falsehoods, misconceptions, and beliefs that no longer serve a purpose. Many people struggle not because they lack the ability to grow, but because they are carrying thoughts that weigh them down, beliefs they have accepted without question, ideas inherited from others, and assumptions mistaken for truth. True wisdom does not come from merely accumulating knowledge, but from the willingness to discard what is untrue. Much of what a person believes about themselves is not the result of careful reasoning but of repeated exposure. A child who is told they are not creative will grow into an adult who does not even attempt to create. A student who hears they are not good at mathematics will never develop the confidence to improve. These beliefs are not conclusions formed through, they are suggestions planted in the mind before they had a chance to be challenged. If such beliefs go unexamined, they become the quiet rulers of a person's future. The challenge of unlearning is that it requires more effort than learning itself. Learning as it happens naturally as one absorbs information. But unlearning demands intentionality. It requires a person to look at their thoughts and ask, where did this come from? Is it true? Has it been tested, or have I simply accepted it because it was given to me? Many people are reluctant to ask these questions because they fear the discomfort that comes with realizing they have been mistaken. But discomfort is not a sign of failure, it is the first step toward real transformation. People often cling to familiar beliefs, even when those beliefs limit them. There is a strange security in what is known, even if it is harmful. A person may hold on to the idea that they are not meant for success because it protects them from the pain of trying and failing. Another may insist that they are incapable of change because it allows them to remain within the safety of their current habits. Unlearning requires a kind of bravery that not all are willing to summon, the courage to admit that what has been long believed may not be true. There is no shame in unlearning. A person does not become foolish by discarding a false belief, they become wise. To recognize that one has been misled is not an admission of weakness, but a testament to their strength. The greatest thinkers, the most profound leaders, and the boldest pioneers did not rise above their peers because they knew more, but because they questioned more. They were willing to abandon ideas that no longer served them, even when those ideas were comfortable. Unlearning is not merely about rejecting falsehoods, but replacing them with truths that empower rather than constrain. A person who once believed they were incapable must not only remove that thought, but replace it with a belief in their potential. The empty space left by discarded assumptions must be filled with principles that promote growth, confidence, and courage. The mind, like nature, does not tolerate emptiness for long. If one does not plant new, empowering beliefs, the old ones will return. Many resist the process of unlearning because it threatens their identity. If a person has built their sense of self upon certain beliefs, then challenging those beliefs feels like tearing down a foundation. A person who has always seen themselves as unlucky may resist the idea that they have control over their circumstances, because it would require them to take responsibility for their actions. Another who has long viewed themselves as unworthy of success may feel unsettled by the notion that they are capable, because it would demand that they try. But the true foundation of a strong identity is not built upon limitations, but upon a commitment to seek truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. The process of unlearning is not a single event, but a lifelong discipline. It requires vigilance, an ongoing willingness to examine one's thoughts and remove what no longer serves. New experiences, new insights, and new challenges will always reveal areas where unlearning is necessary. What a person believes today may not serve them tomorrow, and wisdom lies in the willingness to adapt. Those who hold too tightly to outdated ideas will find themselves confined, while those who embrace the courage to unlearn will move forward unhindered. The mind was never meant to be a prison. It was not created to be filled with inherited doubts, unquestioned fears, and borrowed limitations. It was designed to be a place of transformation, where thought is refined, where old constraints are broken, and where new possibilities take root. The act of unlearning is not a loss, but a liberation. It is the clearing away of falsehoods so that truth may enter. It is the release of what was never real so that what is truly possible can be embraced.